The views expressed in the articles are obviously the opinions of the writers and not me. I make no claims for the veracity of the information presented, so use your head and check these things out for yourself before trying anything you hear about on VOB. And if you've never exercised before, get started. It's never too late, but be sure to check with your doctor first to see if everything is okay, which you should be doing every year anyway. Welcome to Voices of Bodybuilding, Episode 3, the audio magazine devoted to fitness and bodybuilding. This week on Voices of Bodybuilding, in the fitness section, I'll read an article that asks the age-old question, can I exercise after drinking alcohol? From the world of bodybuilding, are body part splits dead? Writer Andy Van Grinsven thinks so. I'm not so sure, but after I read you his article, see what you think. And then stick around because I'm going to ask Dave Pulcinella about that same question and get his response. And finally, the off-topic article this week is really not that far off topic. It's one of my favorite stories from my brother Dave's book, Beyond Raising the Bar, that I think you'll enjoy. It's about his first competitive bodybuilding experience, and I guarantee it's not quite what you expect. Our first piece is from Time.com. It's an article about a situation we've all been in from time to time. From the You Asked section, Can I Exercise After Drinking Alcohol? By Markham Heid. It happens at least once a week. You're intent on exercising after work, but then your colleagues cajole you into a happy hour drink or two. You could still make it to the gym, but you're not sure that's such a hot idea. And you'd be right. At least when it comes to the muscle-building benefits of exercise, alcohol is an unhelpful workout partner, says John Hawley, head of the Exercise and Nutrition Research Group at Australian Catholic University. In a study published in 2014, Hawley found that athletes who knocked back a few drinks after working out had lower rates of protein synthesis, which increases muscle size and also aids muscle repair, both of which are essential if you want to build strength or stamina through exercise, compared to athletes who didn't drink after working out. Quote, one would expect the results to be the same for alcohol intake before exercise, end quote, Hawley says. Another study, this one from New Zealand, concluded that an adult beverage could also limit your muscles' ability to take up and utilize glucose. Since your muscles rely on glucose for energy, your performance on endurance-related tasks would almost certainly take a hit, the study suggests. You'd also likely burn fewer calories during exercise and between gym visits. Muscle physiology aside, the quality and intensity of your workouts might suffer if you're a little tipsy. Hawley mentions impaired motor skill and athletic performance as two likely side effects of alcohol. And while a wobbly warrior pose isn't the end of the world, weightlifting could be risky. A recent study of people who did CrossFit found rates of injury went up as a person's form broke down. There's also the question of staying motivated during your workout. Assuming you find the willpower to hit the gym even after a drink, pushing yourself through that final set or steep hill climb may prove tougher if you've been drinking, indicates research from England's Edge Hill University. The study team found that just smelling alcohol was enough to weaken people's willpower. All of this may seem like a bummer if you're fond of both alcohol and exercise, and that's many of us. People who work out regularly are also more likely to drink regularly compared to their less active buddies, found research from Pennsylvania State University. Quote, both alcohol and exercise cause the release of feel-good chemicals in the brain, says J. Lee Leisure, director of the Behavioral Neuroscience Lab at the University of Houston. Like the Penn State study, Leisure's research shows it's common for people who enjoy alcohol to also engage in exercise. The good news. Just one or two drinks, depending on your size and tolerance, probably won't have much impact on your post-exercise muscle recovery, Hawley says. His study included a fairly big dose of alcohol. Now we're talking binge-level boozing here. And he says the relationship between alcohol and protein synthesis is likely dose-dependent, meaning drinking a little would probably only have a little effect on your muscle's ability to bounce back bigger and stronger following a workout. Likewise, the authors of the New Zealand study determined that drinking less than 0.5 grams of booze per kilogram of body weight, roughly 2 drinks for a 165-pound adult, was unlikely to be a big deal. You probably won't set any personal best if you're spinning, sprinting, or lifting after a drink. And if you've had enough alcohol to feel a bit loopy, you're better off postponing your gym visit. But if you're intent on exercising, and you exercised a little restraint at the bar, feel free to sweat a little if you can summon up the willpower. That's pretty good news, I guess. But I would guess that anyone who's really serious is probably trying to stay away from alcohol in general. I mean, especially if you're training for a specific goal, you probably don't want to be drinking at all anyway. But, if you do have one or two, at least you know you can still work out and keep the progress going. And now for our bodybuilding article. I don't know about you, but I've been doing the body part split for years and years. It's always worked for me, and I feel it makes the most of my limited time. But this article from tnation.com makes some good points about giving up the body part split. Body part splits are dead. 5 reasons your workout plan is holding you back, by Andy Van Grinsven, posted in January of 2017. Body part splits are for noobs and drug users. Body part split routines are a rite of passage for just about every lifter. Monday chest day, Tuesday back day, Wednesday leg day, etc. Most of the time, each major muscle group is targeted and hit on its own day and trained once every 7 days or so. It works. At least it works for a while. Initially, body part splits provide a good training stimulus for growth. After all, everything works for a new lifter. And sure, pro bodybuilders for whom training is a full-time job can keep getting results by blasting away on the same split for years on end. But of course, they have certain advantages. But after the newbie gains well runs dry, your body part split is actually holding you back from continued growth. Here are 5 reasons why it doesn't work for long and some better options. 1. Insufficient training frequency. There's no question that a body part split provides ample opportunity for blitzing every muscle group. You won't work the same muscle group for another week, but you need that much time for those muscles to recover. There's a better way to train, though. Suppose that instead of 3 sets each of 4 exercises for a muscle, which is 12 sets total, you did 3 sets each of 3 exercises for a muscle twice per week, 18 sets total. Although you'd be unable to match the volume per workout of a body part split, the latter scenario would result in a sleeve-busting 50% increase in weekly volume compared to the traditional body part split. In fact, a recent meta-analysis conducted by Dr. Brad Schoenfeld confirmed that higher training frequency induced greater mass gains than a body part split routine, even when volume was matched between groups. The increases are likely due to more frequent breakdown of muscle tissue and subsequent protein synthesis. 2. Fewer opportunities to perfect form. An oft-neglected way to improve strength and mass is by improving technique. Just take a look around at the piss-poor technique most scrawny lifters display and compare it to how fluidly the biggest lifters execute their movements. Lifting weights is a skill that only gets better with practice. Ask any world-class pianist, ballerina, or artist, and they would agree, you can't just show up once a week and expect to perfect your craft. Yet by working each muscle only once a week, as with a body part split, that's exactly what you're doing. On the flip side, by increasing frequency, you give yourself more opportunities to practice. The end result is increased neuromuscular efficiency, or the ability to recruit more muscle faster, which leads to greater force output, strength. Pavel Tsatsouline refers to it as greasing the groove. In practice, this might include back squatting on Monday and front squatting on Thursday, or heavy bench press on Tuesday and speed bench press on Friday. Even goblet squats during your daily warm-up routine can go a long way towards improving your squat mechanics, not to mention adding hassle-free volume for your lower body. 3. Not applicable to regular lifters. You're not Mr. Olympia, so don't try to train like him. You're now free to move about the cabin. Seriously, you're probably not a world-class bodybuilder. You probably have a full-time job, partner, and kids. All in all, you probably don't have hours on end each day to devote to training, nor tons of money to drop on performance-enhancing drugs that allow 3-hour back workouts. So why on earth would you use the same training split as one of those guys? Of course, just because you only have a few hours to train every week doesn't mean you can't get bigger and stronger. It just means you have to pick a routine that's more suited to your lifestyle and abilities. Ditch the shackles of the body part split and free yourself to explore more realistic methods. The optimal training splits for the everyman and woman are full body, push-pull, and upper-lower. These splits allow you to scale your goals to be more realistic and easier to conquer. Instead of trying to tack on long workouts on top of an already busy work week, all you'll need are 3 to 4 sessions per week of 30 to 60 minutes. Once you make this change, a crucial mental shift will occur. Instead of each workout representing a huge barrier, especially leg day, every workout will feel more like a conquerable opportunity, enabling you to approach the iron with consistent intensity and laser-like focus. 4. Impractical for busy people. Imagine the following scenario. It's International Chest Day, sometimes referred to as Monday. You attack chest day with feverish enthusiasm. Then Tuesday rolls around. With less enthusiasm and a whole lot of DOMs, you hit back day. On Wednesday, life throws you a curveball and you can't go to the gym. You continue your body part split plan on Thursday, but get thrown off again on Friday when your kiddo gets the flu or your job runs overtime. The next time chest day rolls around, it's been well over a week since you last hit your pecs. If that happens often, you're going to end up training chest just 2 or 3 times a month. In contrast, if you trained your entire body every session, or even opted for an upper-lower or push-pull split, which is alternating days of anterior chain and posterior chain exercises, you'd never abandon entire muscle groups for over a week. 5. The body adapts and stagnates. Your body is an incredibly adaptable machine. Stress, as applied through weight training, causes your cells and tissues to adapt and become stronger. When you hit the weights hard, your body adapts so the next bout is easier. But continued gains are only made if new stress is added over time. The body part split that gave you your first taste of iron and ballooned you up into a miniature Hulk eventually stops working. The easiest way to introduce new stress and force new adaptations is to switch up the split as soon as you recognize you're stagnating. Again, the best options are full body, push-pull, and upper-lower. Special thanks to Travis Pollan for his contributions to this article. Wow, I went into this originally thinking that it was not going to change my mind about body part splits because I really feel like they work well for me. But you know what? I think I'm going to try this. I think I'm going to try more of the full body technique and see what happens over the next few months. Andy makes some really good points, and he's kind of convinced me. In our next segment with my brother Dave, I think I'm going to bring this up and see what he has to say about it. So here to talk about the body part split article that I just read is my brother Dave. Dave, are body part splits dead like Andy Van Grinsven from T-Nation says?
As you may know, I have a huge problem with any article or anything, podcast, whatever, video, anything, where the person is saying that something, anything, is obsolete, not necessary, or should never be done. Whenever somebody has the pendulum all the way over to one side, I have a huge problem with that. There is a time and a place for everything. And I will say this, body part splits work. There's a place for them. Obviously, every champion bodybuilder that's ever existed, I mean, do I need to make this statement? Everyone that's ever existed has used body part splits. Well, now all of a sudden you shouldn't do them.
And I say it in the previous segment, I've done it pretty much my whole life. And, for 55, I'm in pretty good shape. In other words, it works pretty well for me.
It works pretty well for everyone. Now, here's the caveat with body part splits. Because you are hitting the next body part so infrequently. Like, for instance, with my body part split, I do chest and shoulders every Tuesday. So that's a week in between.
Right.
But my intensity is such that I go to positive and negative failure for every set of every exercise. My central nervous system is blown out. Those muscles themselves are absolutely positively and negatively shot for that session. I don't want to train those body parts again for another week. However, if you're not able to generate that kind of specific intensity within a body part, say you're a beginner or intermediate, and when you're hitting bench presses, you feel it in your triceps and your shoulders and a little bit in your calves because you're stabilizing yourself on the bench. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're still striving to get the mind-to-muscle communication and the innervation. More frequency might be a good idea for that person. So a full body split or a push-pull might be a great idea. Which is why, if you remember, even Dad, back in the 70s, when he made my first routines,
yeah,
I don't know how he knew this. He just knew instinctively this, and this is true. You start someone off on a full body workout because guess what? They're going through the motions in the beginning. They don't know how to innervate that muscle with real efficiency. They can't obliterate it with work because they can't really target it yet. So the movements are kind of just, you're getting used to the actual movement, a bench press, a row, a press, a squat, and you're getting the entire systemic thing down. So you're going to need more frequency because you're not going to be able to actually obliterate that muscle like, say, an advanced bodybuilder or someone at the national or pro level can. I mean, I can go into the gym and in 40 minutes, my chest is completely trash and will not need to be stimulated again for another week.
But isn't it also true that if you're a beginner, pretty much anything you do is going to start the process of...
Absolutely.
I was in the gym the other day and there was this sort of middle-aged woman who was, a New Year's resolutionist trying to get back in shape. And she was doing these pull downs so poorly. And I'm not the kind of guy to go over and, hey, baby, you don't know how to do that. I'm going to tell you how to do that right. I'm not saying that, but I was thinking to myself, you know what? It probably doesn't matter because she's moving, she's pulling some weight. It's probably good enough.
She's doing something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes I feel like these people have to fill pages. So they come up with something that's going to be controversial. Body part splits are dead. No, they're not. They're very, very much alive. And everyone I know does them. Everyone I know who looks really good does them. And some people who don't look really good do them. Some people who look like shit do them. Then some people who look really good do 3-day-a-week full body, do push-pull, do whatever. There's all kinds of different ways to do it. And everything is right and everything is wrong. Depends on your situation.
Yeah, well, it seems that this particular article, well, first of all, any article you write, you want people to read. And so you're not going to title it, Body Part Splits might be okay some of the times, but I have another idea that you might want to try. No one's going to read that.
Right?
It has to be controversial. And we know from social media that people will share something that makes them angry a lot sooner than they'll share something that they love.
Right. That's a good point.
Okay? So you're better off making people angry. But beyond that, I also think that this whole article is sort of like the IIFYM thing, which is this will work for someone who can't do it the 100%, 110% intense way.
Right.
And if you don't have the time, and if you're just, a family man and you can't be...
Yeah, that's a really good point, because in order to make body part splits work, you have to be able to saturate that muscle and work that one day. You really have to be able to trash it, which requires mental focus and acuity, intensity. You have to be able to go through that pain barrier and several reps into it on every set take some of the sets to negative failure. Yeah. And who can do that?
Right. And if half the time you're in the gym, you're getting a phone call from your kid's school that he got in trouble again, and you got to go down and talk to the principal, maybe the full body workout is for you.
Exactly. And that's a really good point.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is from my point of view, so I'm reading this and I'm like, yeah, maybe I should try switching things up because I do the body part split and it'll be just good for a change. But then I started to think, at my age, at 55,
right,
does my body need that longer recovery? Should I not be working the same body part any closer together than 7 to 10 days?
I don't think you should, actually, because you're not one of those people who goes into the gym and just goes through the motion. You always have worked out hard. Right. I mean, you're not a bodybuilder, but I've seen you train, and you take every set to failure. You work just as hard as a lot of the bodybuilders that I know.
That's because that's how I learned, not only from Dad, but because my first gym was the Nautilus, you remember? And they taught you to go to failure, to 12 rep or 15 rep failure every time.
Yeah, the Nautilus system was based on an all-out effort.
Right.
All-out effort. So if you were to do the type of training that you do, with the type of intensity that you bring,
mm-hmm,
and you were trying to do it more frequently, I think you would burn out. And it's not only the muscles that aren't recovering. It's your entire nervous system that's not going to recover.
I never understood that. I never understood the nervous system getting tired thing. I don't really get that.
The central nervous system responds to stress of any kind, whether it's emotional, cortisol release, physical stress, injury,
right,
mental stress, the fight or flight, those chemicals that are released, the cortisol, the catabolic versus the anabolic. There's always a balance in your body between anabolic and catabolic forces. So you got to look at weight training as a catabolic force. We've talked about this before. Everything in your day can be broken down into either an anabolic event or a catabolic event. An anabolic event, an example of that is taking a nice restful nap. Lets your body recover and recoup, puts you back in an anabolic state. An example of a catabolic event would be a weight training session, a really hard weight training session. You have to recover from that. It's catabolic initially.
Right.
Initially, it's catabolic. So, eating a good meal is an anabolic event. Doing your cardio is a catabolic event. So you are nothing at the end of the day but a sum total of all the anabolic and catabolic events that you've had in that day. You want to end up with a balance at the end of the day in favor of the anabolic.
So when you have a new client who's basically a newbie at working out, mm-hmm, what kind of a workout do you give them?
If they've never done anything before, it'll be a full body, 3-day a week, circuit weight training, machine workout. I'm not going to ask them to start using their assister muscles right away. I'm going to put them through maybe 1 or 2 weeks of this, where they're just moving their limbs against some resistance in a machine that guides their path.
Right, controls the path.
Especially if they've done nothing, because putting them on a bench, laying down on their back with a pair of dumbbells in their hand, will be the most discouraging piece of shit you could ever have them do. They're going to be all over the place. Remember the first time you got under a bench press?
Yes, I do.
It looked like a baby fawn trying to stand up. So
that's exactly what it looks like.
It is what it looks like. So I'm not going to do that to them. I have them just move their limbs against resistance, get used to the mind-muscle connection. Try to feel this in your chest if you can. Retract your scapula, stick your chest forward, try to contract that at the top. When you're doing pull downs, try to feel it in something other than your biceps. Once we're at that point, we can start incorporating some free weights, and it's a progressive thing. They'll go from a 3-day a week, and of course it's based on how many days they tell me they can get there. If I'm like, how many days a week can you get to the gym? Well, right, I can do safely put aside 3. Okay, I'm going to give you a 5-day split. I wouldn't be very successful if I did that to people. So I also base it on how many days they say they can get to the gym. So a 3-day full body split is a great place to start. It teaches the person to move against resistance, which they've probably never done before. Gets them used to doing the machines in an environment that's not too threatening because they're not in the free weight area.
Yeah. So when you graduate them from machines to free weights, though, do you recommend that they get a trainer that goes out on the floor with them?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say so.
Do you have a friend who can help you? Is your husband come in here and help you? Would you mind maybe signing up with one of the trainers for a month until you got it down? That kind of a thing. But it's always a good idea, especially if they've ever done anything. Now, if they've come to me and they have some experience, they've done free weights before. Maybe they haven't been doing it for years. I will give them some free weights mixed with machines in maybe a 3-day split of some kind. Arms and shoulders, chest and back, legs. Or push-pull, chest, shoulders, triceps, back, biceps, legs. These are great intermediate type workouts. And then obviously the body part split is the king. It's not dead. It is in fact the king.
Well, I think now talking to you, I see it for what it is. I think he's trying to fashion something for people who are too busy, and because I just realized that when my daughter was born, this was 25 years ago, and I had to go from work and get home really quick to help my wife with her because my wife was still laid up from giving birth. Mm-hmm. I was still going to the gym, but I would go in there and do like a 25 or 30 minute full body thing, 3 or 4 days a week, and then rush right home. And that sort of kept me in shape good enough until she was older and I could get back to doing the body part split. So I think it is a good thing for maybe a short period of time, or if you're in a situation where you can't spend a lot of time and energy in the gym.
Well, that brings us right back to what I originally said. There's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah.
And when I come back to training, now I haven't been in the gym for 2.5 weeks, and I am rapidly melting each day because I can't move.
Right.
And so with each day, I see myself just melting away. And when I come back to the gym, my first few workouts are probably just going to be me doing a certain machine for each body part, especially since I'm not mobile in the lower body and I have to do things that are safe.
Right.
So that will be my workout. So I will not be doing body part splits. Look, I agree with this guy to a certain level. And again, maybe the title of the article itself is a bit sensationalistic because of he's trying to reach an audience and have him actually read your article.
Right.
But I do actually agree with him in that if I sat there and dispensed body part workouts to everybody, it would be tragic. You can't do that. Every person who comes to see you presents you with a different set of circumstances and rules that you have to come up with certain parameters for them to be successful. And that sometimes precludes a body part workout. It sometimes demands a body part workout. But the fact remains is that it's not dead. It just has its place, as do the other types of workouts that he mentions.
I gotcha. Well, I'm really interested in how you can figure out what is best for a person as they walk through the door. But you know what? I'm going to save that for next week because your topic about Oprah Winfrey and her Weight Watchers campaign, I know you're going to go off on that, and I have a few questions I want to tie into that. So we'll save that for next week. And so for this week, I'll let you go, and hope you're feeling better.
Thanks, bro.
See ya. If you have ever attempted competitive bodybuilding, you will never forget your first show. It's a nerve-wracking time. Weeks of training, dieting, and anxiety, culminating in the intense scrutiny of your entire, nearly naked body, a process sure to induce insecurity in anyone, and ending with what often can be utter disappointment. Sounds like fun, right? Well, here's a story written by Dave Pulcinella about the first time he competed in a show he never intended to compete in. This story comes from Dave's book, Beyond Raising the Bar, Excerpts from a Life in Bodybuilding, which is kind of like a prequel to the Raising the Bar documentaries that Dave and I made together. It's his way of telling some of the stories of the beginnings of his bodybuilding career, what drove him to it, and some of the funny stories that we weren't able to get to in the documentaries. This chapter is called Take the Trophy and Run. The very first time I won a state show, I entered the contest from my seat in the audience. Now, this is a true statement. I'm not overly cocky or confident, and I certainly never would have done this had it not been for Kenny. In fact, I'd have to credit my friend Kenny Weiss almost solely for my rise in the sport from 1989 through the mid-1990s. His sheer, all-encompassing intensity was contagious. For him, a set wasn't complete until he could no longer move the limb through the positive or negative portion of the exercise, nor fire the muscle in question to even cause it to twitch. The set wasn't done until he couldn't move at all. To my young bodybuilding brain, this was awesome. I wanted to emulate this. I repeatedly saw Kenny go from a very unimpressive off-season body to becoming so shredded and jacked that he looked chiseled down from a piece of granite. He would routinely beat much larger and better-shaped competitors simply because he was willing to take his training, diet, cardio, and every aspect of his prep to a place no one else was willing to. Pain meant nothing. It was simply something to be ignored, an annoying speed bump on the way to the destination of an effective set. He had no regard for bloodshed or injury during a workout. Anything short of an actual tendon rupture was treated with a detour in the workout, selecting a different exercise that wouldn't make the injury worse, then completing the workout and finding some ice later, perhaps. He also taught me what it meant to eat properly for contest prep. Prior to meeting him, I had only the most rudimentary idea of how it was done, and I grossly underestimated what it took to get that grainy, transparent-skinned look. But I was a quick learner. He taught me something, showed me once, and it was incredibly etched in my mental notebook of things that work. To me, everything in this world can cleanly and neatly be put into one of two categories. 1, things that work, and 2, things that don't work and are a waste of time. Of course, I'm talking solely of the goal to forge a shredded physique while retaining the most amount of muscle possible. There is a definite set of shit you need to do to achieve this. Towards the end, most of this shit is really uncomfortable, so most people don't do it. Or they take their bodies to a certain point, but then stop because they start to feel small. Kenny taught me not to do that there is virtually no limit to the amount of fat you can lose as long as you keep pushing and ignore the discomfort. So, following his lead, I was usually ready for my shows at least a month out. I would be in good enough shape 3 or 4 weeks out to win the show. Then for the remaining weeks until the show, I would just get tighter and tighter. This particular year was no exception. It was July, and my show was going to be in August. I was right on target, and my girlfriend at the time, Jill, had decided she was going to do a show as well. She prepped for and entered the AAU version of the Mr. and Ms. Pennsylvania contest. The year was 1991, and this was a fairly big show back then. The AAU was still a huge bodybuilding organization, and this promised to be a well-contested show. Taking my seat in the audience, I waited while the competitors' meeting took place, and the vendors set up their tables to sell their gorilla wear and tubs of pixie powder and other supplements of the day. I was anxious to see Jill on stage, as she had worked hard and looked great. Just then, Kenny materialized from the backstage area. He leaned over, his demeanor looking like that of someone who has a military secret and is about to divulge it and doesn't want to get killed while doing so. He said, "Hey, listen up. I was just backstage and saw most of the competitors back there weighing in. Not for nothing, but I think you could win this show." I replied, "Cool. That means I'm definitely on track for my show next month. Thanks, Kenny." He raised his voice. "No, jerk off. I mean, you're going to do this show. You're going to do it and win." At first I thought he was insane. How is this possible? These people all prepped and dieted and dried out for this show. I had not. I had no tan. I had no trunks. I had no music. I hadn't entered the show, nor did I have my AAU card yet. There was obviously no way this could happen. All of these things were true, but you see, Kenny is a visionary. Part nut, part motivational speaker, and part opportunist. In minutes, he somehow got me to believe this crazy thing could actually happen. He ran backstage and bought a bottle of tanning solution and a sponge brush from the vendor. He also bought a pair of trunks. He ran out to his car and grabbed his Rocky cassette tape. I would pose to the Rocky theme. Why not? Everyone else was back then. The AAU card could be purchased the day of the show, and late entrants could sign up that day as well. So apparently, all my excuses were pulled out from under me in 20 minutes. I guess I'm doing the show. This was highly irregular, and it took a few minutes for me to wrap my head around the fact that this was actually happening. But once I did, it was on. I got painted, threw my trunks on, pumped up, and got in line. Jill had already gone on, so she was taken care of and was in the audience watching with the rest of the crowd. Looking around backstage, it was hard to assess how I looked compared to the other guys. As competitors, I think most of us have a skewed idea of how we look anyway, so I decided not to even bother looking at them. Kenny slapped some oil on me at the last minute, and out on stage I went. Going through the quarter turns and mandatory poses, it was pretty clear the judges liked me. They put me in the middle and didn't move me at all. As it turned out, Kenny was right, and I took my class pretty easily. When we came back for the evening finals, the class winners had to pose down for the overall title. Between the morning and evening shows, people had been talking about how I entered at the spur of the moment from the audience. The judges also learned this piece of news. By the evening show, it had become a huge controversy. There were some judges who didn't have a problem with this, but there were others who had a huge problem with it. They thought it was a cocky move on my part and undermined the guys who had prepped solely for this show. The two camps became diametrically opposed on the subject, and during the overall pose down, I could actually see an argument brewing at the judges' table. At the time, I didn't know what it was about. I had no idea it was about me. Apparently, the head judge had passed down the piece of paper with the final scores on it, revealing me as the overall winner. Some of the judges who were opposed to me winning the show this way began to get agitated, and a verbal argument ensued. As I watched from the stage, full pose down in progress, I could see the head judge and another judge involved in a bitter verbal disagreement. The other competitors saw it too, but we just kept posing. Soon, they began exchanging punches. The brawl quickly escalated and poured into the front row of the audience, picking up participants as it spread. The fight between the two judges had now become a small riot, and the other class winners and I saw this and stopped posing. It was quickly broken up and order was restored. The house cut the music, and the four class winners stood there awaiting the results. I was announced the overall winner, and a simultaneous symphony of cheers and boos rose in the audience. The head judge had to be restrained, and I was advised to get my trophy and just exit the venue as quickly as possible. Kenny ran backstage and grabbed my belongings. I ran out of the back of the auditorium in my posing trunks, trophy in hand. Jill pulled the car up, and Kenny and I jumped in like we were jumping into a getaway car after a bank robbery. We drove off and went to the nearest McDonald's for our post-contest feel-good meals. So that's the story of my first state championship. A little bittersweet perhaps, a tad controversial maybe, but I wouldn't trade that day for anything. In addition to the title of Mr. Pennsylvania, I saw how seizing an opportunity can pay dividends and how anything is possible once you wipe away the bullshit and the excuses. Another life lesson learned from Kenny Weiss. Kenny Weiss was a very unique individual, very funny, also very acerbic, and I'm sad to say he passed away last year, which was devastating to all of us, especially to Dave. Hopefully his legacy will live on in these stories in Beyond Raising the Bar. You can purchase Beyond Raising the Bar, Excerpts from a Life in Bodybuilding, at Amazon. Just search under books, Beyond Raising the Bar, and it should come right up. Thanks for listening to Voices of Bodybuilding. Just a reminder that you can send me articles to be considered for this podcast at mike@mikepulcinella.com. They can be articles you find or pieces you write yourself. So till next time, stay active and stay healthy.